Evil Dead the game released an update today on June 28th, and this one is all about bug fixes, where last week it was all about balance changes. We have a short list of things here that they did, but they are a lot of important things. So I'm going to go over them and tell you why they matter in a practical sense and how it's actually going to affect your game, okay? So let's just get straight into it here. Survivors are no longer stuck after being revived from the bleeding out state. Pretty straightforward, but on that note, pro tip, something you can do if you're a Warlord player with a puke that slows people down, makes it so they can't sprint or dodge. If somebody's being revived, just wait to puke on them as soon as they get picked back up, and then you can down them again real fast. So that pro tip there made me think of that. So this is probably the biggest one out of this patch in terms of what people were looking forward to here. The demon no longer receives infernal energy during possession for shooting a bleeding out survivor. So if you're not familiar with what they're talking about here, when you're a demon and you possess a survivor, any shot that you hit on another survivor will make it so your infernal energy goes up. It's to help counter the fact that your infernal energy drains really fast when you possess a survivor. Something you could do is if a survivor got downed, let's say by you, because you shot them, you could continue to shoot them, and that would keep making your infernal energy go up, even though they can't fight back anymore because you killed them. So this makes it so you can't do that anymore. This was especially effective on shotguns, because one shot from a shotgun would make your energy just poof, climb. It was also pretty effective on things like pistols. And you can imagine all the different reasons why that's a good thing for the demon. One is that the longer you possess a survivor, the more damage they take once you unpossess them. So this would make it so that you are more likely to cause them to bleed out when you unpossess them. It was also a really big tactic in camping a body to make it so that it was really hard for the other survivors to revive somebody who was bleeding out. And then since you could sit there and keep piling up energy, it really allowed you to snowball, especially if you were something like a hunter who does a lot of damage with a shotgun. Now, to be clear, this is only going to be affecting survivors that are bleeding out, or also survivors that were dead, you could shoot their soul. That was a little weird. This is only going to affect that scenario. So you're still going to get a lot of energy if you're using like a shotgun and you nail a survivor that's still alive. Now, this was a really divisive topic in the community because some people absolutely hated this. They thought it was a terrible thing for the game, and other people thought it added a layer of depth to the game. So let's talk about a little bit of both of that and why it matters. So I could see why people felt like it was not good for the game, because it felt like once the demon got a hold of somebody who had a really powerful shotgun, they could just take over the entire game. And then on the topic of it removing depth, this is mainly from a counterplay perspective. You just don't have to worry about as many things anymore. You don't have to think about as many things anymore. For example, since this was in the game, something I would do as a survivor is I would purposely not carry a shotgun if I was a warrior or I was a healer, because all it did was make me a liability. On top of the fact that you're just taking long ammo from your hunter, it made me a liability because if I got possessed, which by the way, warriors and supports are pretty easy to possess, it made it so that I was somebody who could go ahead and really hurt the entire team because I could just be used as a way to generate infernal energy for the demon. So you don't have to worry about that part of it anymore. And then on the demon side, something that demons have to deal with is that survivors can drop their gun as they're being possessed, basically. So what this did was it made it so you could get a lot of value if you actually managed to nail somebody like a hunter who was carrying a shotgun. Another thing this does is that really investing into anti-fear on your hunter, while it's still going to be important, it's not as big of a deal because the hunter can't sit there and snowball as well as it could before. So little less consideration on the fear front, because it's really going to cap what a demon is capable of, right? Like if they go ahead and they nail a survivor and get him down, that's cool, but then they're probably going to get shot in the meantime and then get kicked out of it. Another thing that gets lost in all this is that the demon loses a counterplay to people that drop guns. If you're not familiar, something you can do in this game is you can just drop your gun while you're being possessed, or right as your fear goes over the threshold, you're like, oh, he's probably going to possess me anyway. Then you can just drop your gun and the demon gets very little value out of that possession, which really sucks when you try to possess a hunter who has a really strong shotgun, but they drop the gun before you could even do anything about it anyway. So this allowed the demon to take advantage of people's mistakes when they did make them. In terms of how I feel about this, I don't really care. It was in the game, so it was one of the things I recognized, played around, played with, and now that it's not in the game, well, now I don't got to think about it anymore. That's how I felt about animation canceling too. I don't really get upset about this kind of stuff. If it's in the game, it's in the game. Well, it's not in the game anymore, then it's not in the game anymore, and you just play around the changes. So what I do think, if they're going to go ahead and do a change like this, I think something that would make sense is to kind of complement this change a little bit. Something that I think is a little bit of an issue right now is that the shotguns do way too much damage as they scale up. I think the boomstick does like at base value like 666 damage when it's legendary. There's nothing else in the game that's even close to that. Like Not even close. So all of the shotgun stuff just scales a little bit too hard. And while the damage on the shotgun is something that kind of feels like it's its own issue, it is a little bit tied together because this makes it so that survivors get even more benefit out of these shotguns and the demons don't really get as much. Also, something I do think that would be nice is maybe not getting more energy when somebody is bleeding out, but some sort of feedback if you just shoot a bleeding out survivor, I do think would be fun and intuitive, right? Like, a big problem with the cars in this game is that if you try to run somebody over, it doesn't do anything, and that doesn't make sense. So it's kind of the same vibe as if you're shooting somebody who's bleeding out, it would make sense that if they die faster, or at least something, right? Some sort of player feedback if you continue to invest bullets into them and time, right? Because your infernal energy is going to be on a timer. So this is probably the biggest change out of this patch that's going to get the most coverage or discussion, etc. And then let's go through the rest of the stuff here. Survivors no longer stay in the bleeding out state if healed after completing the page or dagger has been collected. Survivors will no longer be in a ragdoll state if a possessed survivor shoots at them in the bleeding out state right before they die. And then another one here, which is a really big one, is the balance bar damage for the blue hunting rifle has been corrected. So if you're not familiar, the blue hunting rifle has had a balance bar damage of 255. To put that to scale, a purple hunting rifle, aka the one that is one level rarity higher than this, had a stumble or balance bar damage of 52. So there was something severely wrong with the blue hunting rifle for a while, and you knew when you went up against a team that really knew what was going on with the game, because they would have their warrior pick up a blue hunting rifle, because again, even though warrior does less health damage, it's not going to do less balance bar damage with a gun. So they would put that on their Scotty, their Wash, their Henry, and then they would sit there, and anytime you tried to possess something, if they nailed a headshot, they would go ahead and do a ton of balance bar damage. So this was just a straight up bug, and now it's fixed. Infernal energy is no longer regenerated on dark ones when both the demon and survivors were nearby before the objectives have been completed. Apparently this was a bug. Frankly, I don't agree with this one. I think that they should keep this in the game, because as long as survivors are able to see where the dark ones are, then the demon should go ahead and get infernal energy if the demon and the survivors are both nearby it. Because something that is a powerful tactic in this game right now, no debate about it, is that the survivors can scout where the dark ones are before the blue objectives are completed. So this allows the survivors to, one, determine which blue objective they are going to go after first. Two, it allows them to pounce on the dark ones right as the second blue objective is done. I do this all the time. I'll be in a group of people, we're all on the point, and then let's say there's about this much left on the second blue objective, and I already know where the dark ones are because I scouted them out beforehand. I start driving on over to the dark ones, and then as soon as the blue objective's done, then I can immediately start attacking the dark ones. So, I don't agree with this one, because if the demon sees someone doing that, the demon should generate energy, because scouting the dark ones gives the survivors a huge advantage. Like, it's almost impossible to counter with the way the game currently is. The way I think they should do this is keep this on there. Or they should go ahead and make it so that the survivors just can't see the dark ones until the blue objectives are completed. Now, that would remove a layer of depth to the game, which, again, would kind of suck. We're sitting there trying to protect the players from themselves. But if they don't want to go the route of removing the dark ones from visibility, something I think they could do is make it so that if the demon is exercised, especially after that second objective, they get, boom, planted right on top of the dark ones, and maybe they make like a damage radius that comes out of them to make it so that players don't try to pounce on the dark ones right away. I think that's something that could be useful in general to keep people from pouncing on objectives and really bullying the demon, right? So after the first blue objective's completed, the demon should be transported over to the next blue objective so they can set it up and then start interrupting the survivors once they get close. And then after that second blue objective is completed, teleport them on over to the dark ones, and again, boom, as soon as they hit the ground because they get pushed over there, they emit a radius of damage to keep people from immediately attacking the dark ones. That's what I think. Something along those lines. I severely disagree with this one. That gives way too much power to the survivors. And to be clear about how easy it is to scout out the dark ones, there's only 4 spots that they spawn on the small map, and then like 4.5 that they spawn on the big map. So it's pretty easy to know where they're going to be. And pro tip, if you don't know where these locations are, they're always on the south side of the map. So if you have a blue objective that's on the north, do that one first, and then do the blue objective that is more south as a general guide. But if you want a more specific thing, I have a whole video talking about where the dark ones all spawn. I think it's in my expert tips guide. I don't know. One of those. And I show you where they all spawn. So again, this puts way too much power into the pocket of a survivor that knows what they're doing. The Mini Ashes Demon Trap now takes the correct number of items from your inventory. I have no idea what the wrong amount of items was, but apparently that's what it was doing. Another thing going on with the Mini Ashes is that people drop items right before they open a chest, but they can also drop items during the animation, which is definitely a bug they ought to fix. Last one here, we apply to fix if a weapon is picked up by another survivor outside of render range, you'll not see it on the ground. And something as a side note to this, I mean, this is what it is, right? You go ahead and it just makes it so that the guns are more easy to see. But something I think that they could add to this game is make it so that the pink Fs, when they shoot out of the box, they kind of have like a trigger box around them that allows it to be pulled towards the player. And then that would make it so that you don't get those pink Fs that get stuck underneath a box or stuck in the fireplace or stuck in a spot where you can't grab them. They made it so they pull towards you. That would do a lot to go ahead and make lost pink Fs not happen. Or if that already does happen, make it so it's like a wider radius. Anywho, stability here made it so there's less crashing. And then survivor here, this is something that Ed needed. Ed's active skill now deactivates traps immediately after they illuminated by a flashlight. And this also allows him to disarm a supply crate if it was not previously placed by a demon, because that's how you could tell if the demon was already there and trapped through things. So yeah, Ed's flashlight was a little buggy and looks like they cleaned that up a little bit. And then this one here was if you're using the infernal revenue skill, it would make the orbs not respawn as much. So this might actually be a pretty big deal for the demons here. We might find this to be really helpful, because I've had people tell me where they're like, I don't know, the orbs just stopped respawning and I got a dead zone because of it. And it must have been because of this right here. So small patch, but really interesting changes that are going to really just shape the discussion of the game a bit here. I think this is going to be good for the game. It addresses a lot of the things that people were concerned about, especially this one here. This one had a lot of negative discussion surrounding it. So the fact that they did something to address it, I think is good. But again, Saber, really, please go ahead. And if you put something in patch notes, explain why you're doing it. And I mean, I think bug fixes are a little bit more straightforward. We're fixing because we thought it was broken. But if you do like balance patches, say why you're doing what you're doing. That would do a lot for the community. That would mean that there's not so much assuming going on, and people would understand your intentions. We stream almost every single night on twitch.tv/SwingPoynt. Links in the description, also the top comment if you want to discuss this patch with me or any other things going on. Also, if you found this video helpful or any other guides on the channel, please consider subscribing down below. We'll be covering this as they keep updating it, including the Castle Kandar update whenever that comes out. Okay? So, thank you guys. You guys are the best, and I'll see you in the next video that we do around here.